You're listening to Tutor Time with Mallory, and now for your host, Mallory Latouche.
and welcome back to Tutor Time with Mallory. Today I have the honor of interviewing Miss Amy Sparks. How are you doing today, Amy?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking, Mallory.
Thank you. What is the School of Hope?
Well, people have asked me that question, and the thing that I can say the most about what the School of Hope is, it is a school that is built from the heart of a mother who lost her son and wanted to honor his memory, and that mother is me. We lost our son 10 and a half years ago in a tragic accident, and one day as I was in Jared's room after he passed away, I remember distinctly saying, "I'll never let your death be in vain. I am going to open the School of Hope." And so I opened a school in memory of our son Jared. He himself had autism. And so we opened a school for kids who have autism here in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
What is your education background?
Well, I have a master's degree in counseling and I have a Bachelor of Arts in elementary education. And I taught 30 years in public ed, and I retired in 2017, and I am now the CEO and principal at the School of Hope, and our school has been open for the past 5 years. And I've also taught at the School of Hope, so education has really been a part of my life, and it will always continue to be, I'm sure.
What inspired you to want to work in the school system?
Are you speaking of before I retired is in
Yes,
the school
ma'am.
system? I always had a love for children, and I've talked with many college students. I've given speeches to different groups, and the thing that I say is that you have to find your joy, and it's a calling. Teaching is a calling, and I always knew that since I was 17 years old that I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to make a difference, and I'm definitely a people person, so I knew that being an educator would give me that opportunity to interact with people. I'm not a desk and paper kind of person. I am a person that likes to interact with people and see the change that can be made by believing in kids and being able to um, see what really makes them tick and being innovative in ideas and ways of which I teach children. I'm not your typical teacher. I did cartwheels, stood on my head, danced with my kids, but teaching to me was almost entertaining or entertainment. But you know what? I never had discipline problems because I had respect for my children, and I laid out the boundaries and the expectations, and all they wanted to do was make me proud, and they did. So, it's a calling, it's a love for what you're doing.
How has your career path led you to where you are now?
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness, it's been a journey. Like I said, I taught 30 years in public ed and I retired in 2017. But the greatest teacher that I had was my son, Jared. And I always used to say, why did I have a child with autism? Why did this happen to me? And then I said, why not me? And I felt that the Lord placed Jared in my life for a reason, and he was preparing me for what I was to do. And Jared fulfilled his purpose and is now with our Heavenly Father. And it was hard losing my son, but I always thought that I was teaching Jared, but in fact, he was the one that was teaching me and preparing me for what was to come. And that was my journey. It's had its ups and downs. It was a tragedy to lose our son, but I believe that you have two choices in life. You can either sit and wallow in your pain and your suffering, or you can get up and make a legacy, live on. And that's what I chose to do with our son, Jared.
What are some of your fondest memories working at the School of Hope?
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. I think some of the greatest memories, one in particular was a child was not speaking when they came to our school, wasn't really saying any words at all. And one day I heard him say, "Miss Amy," for the first time. And I don't think anybody can put a price tag on that. my heart melted to hear that little boy who had not been verbal being able to say my name and speak Miss Amy for the first time, and to hear it. It just, there's no words to describe it, the joy that you feel.
What is something you learned about your career path that you didn't know before?
Oh my, never say never. Never say never. I was going to go into special ed. Matter of fact, when I was doing my undergrad, I called my mom one day and I said, and I'm embarrassed to even say this now, but I said, those children are not for me. How, and the Lord has a big sense of humor, and he thought, oh, those children, huh, Amy? Well, I'm gonna teach you a big lesson, and you're gonna learn so much from those children. And he happened to give me one of the greatest gifts. I have 3 children, and they're all great to me and a gift to me, and they're all different. But Jared was our middle child, and he was the one that had the disability. And it happened to be autism. But I always thought that I would never work with special education. And here I am opening a school for children who have special needs and trying my very best to be a voice, an advocate. But I think the biggest lesson that I learned was never say never. Had you asked me 12 years ago if I wanted to be a principal, I would have laughed. I would have said, no way. What am I doing now? I'm an administrator. So I think that you can never say never, because you may eat your words, and you never know what will happen when you go down a path. Sometimes the Lord takes you in places that you never thought you would go, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. And I think that's where you grow as a person, is when you get out of that comfort zone and you take that step out of that box and you say, I'm going to try something I've never done before. And it may be scary, but it's something that's going to teach me valuable lessons, and it's going to help me be a better individual, a better person. And that's, never say never. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned.
What are the 3 most important skills when working in the school system?
Love for teaching. Love for teaching. You have to love what you're doing. And when you don't love what you're doing, kids are not dumb. They can figure that out right away. I've always said, if you want an honest answer, ask a child. If I came into school one day and I didn't have any makeup, they'd say, Miss Sparks, you don't have any makeup today. You're looking rather, I said, I know, honey, I know. And they would always tell me, if I ever wanted an honest answer, they would always speak that truth, and out of the mouth of babes. One day I was having a really hard time in my class, and it was right after my son died, and I was facing away from the children and I was crying. And I turned around, and that year my kids were the reason why I got out of bed every day. Because when you lose a child, you lose a part of you, and it's so gut-wrenching. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I remember one of the children said to me, Miss Sparks, why are you crying? And I said, I miss my son. And he looked at me and he said, don't you know? And I was like, what? What did I just hear? He said, don't you know? Jared is where he's supposed to be. He's in heaven. And I looked up and I was like, okay, God, all right, I get this. And this little boy happened to be in an environment that was not at all stable. A mother who had walked away, a mother who was on drugs, a little boy who had an alarm clock in his backpack and woke his brother up every day and got him dressed and ready for school. And he was in 3rd grade. You have to love what you do. Kids know when you're for real. You can't lie to them. And so do other students, as high school students. That was not my forte. I felt my calling was for the younger ones. But you make an impression. It's a lasting impression. And I am in contact with kids that I taught my first year of teaching. And they still tell me they remember things that I did, things that I had already forgotten. but they still remember. So you have to love what you're doing. The second thing that I would say to someone that's even considering being a teacher is that you're going to make an impact. What kind of impact are you going to make? A lasting impact that may change the life of somebody for the rest of their life? Or are you going to make a negative impact because they will remember what you've done? Kids don't forget those things. They remember their favorite teacher. I was in Home Goods the other day, and I happened to be checking out, and I looked at this lady and I said, I think I know you. And she goes, Miss Sparks. And I said, yes. And we hugged across the counter. And she said, you know, my son was just talking about you. And I said, oh, how's my baby doing? And she said, I said, how old is he now? 19. And he still talks about Jared. Because you see, I made it a very personal thing in my teaching. They knew my family. They knew things about me. They knew who my children were. They knew what it was like to raise a child with autism. And a lot of times when we would do writing assignments, I would ask them, you know, what's your wish? And some of them would write, I wish for a cure for autism so that Miss Sparks' son would be cured. That's what teaching's all about. It's loving what you do, making an impact, never forgetting that you are going to either make a positive impact or a negative impact. And the last thing that I would say is you have to love what you do because you're not going to get tons of money. It's not about money. It's not about money. And you know, I would tell people, and I do say this all the time, money is not going to make you happy. But when you enjoy getting up every day and loving your children and loving what you do, that is worth any amount of money. And that's the three things that I would say. To love what you're doing. It's a calling. It's not just anything that you can just say, you know what, I think I'm going to wake up and one day and I think I'm just going to be a teacher. No, it's a calling.
What advice would you give the viewers who want to pursue a career in the school system?
First of all, you know, student teaching is very important because it gives you a picture of what the classroom is like. But student teaching is not really actually your class. It's somebody else's, and you're under the direction of somebody else. If you have any doubts about teaching, then you don't need to teach. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that in regards to knowing a curriculum and that kind of thing, because those are things that you're going to learn. You're not going to know everything the first year of teaching. Your first year of teaching is hard. It's a hard year because you've never done it before. And you're not under the direction of a supervisor. It's your classroom. And when you shut the door, you're in charge, not somebody else. And I would say to them, number one, if it's not a calling to you, if it's not a love for you, please don't do it. Because when you take on this kind of responsibility, this awesome responsibility, like I said, you're changing the lives of children. You're planting a foundation, and it can either be negative or positive. But if you're not sure about something and it's not a love and a calling, please don't do it, because you can do more damage than you would ever imagine. Kids know when teachers are not there for them. You know, you hear comments, even parents will say, you can tell that teacher doesn't care. Kids can tell it too. They pick up on that. So if it's not a love and a calling for you, please don't do it. Don't expect all the accolades that you're going to want to get, because they're not always going to happen. But your accolade is knowing that you made a difference, knowing that you took the time to care about a child. You know, I was the type of teacher that I made a lot of phone calls. And when parent-teacher conferences came around, I didn't really have anything new to say to parents. I had already had those conversations. It wasn't, oh, by the way, surprise. No, I had already had those conversations from the first week of school. And one year I counted on the cards that I had with all my students' names. I'd made 120 phone calls, not because I wanted to bother parents, because I cared. And there were times that parents wouldn't pick up the phone because they knew my number. I'd say, excuse me, can I borrow your cell phone from a former teacher, or, from another teacher? I'd call that number and the parent wouldn't know it was me, and they'd pick up. Then they'd have to talk to me. But you know what? That was okay. You know why? Because I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for that child. And so a lot of times parents are not going to appreciate you, but those kids do. And so it's a calling, it's a love for children, and it's a reason for getting out of a comfort zone. Don't be the same old, you hear parents, or excuse me, teachers will say, well, I just use my lesson plans from the previous year. No, you don't. No, you don't. You have new kids, new ideas. Yes, you can gain ideas or get ideas from former lesson plans, but you should never be using the same lesson plans. You have new kids, new ideas, new ways of reaching children. And that's the way it should be. Education is about learning. And I always said, when I can't hug a child, then I can't teach anymore. And if I can't reach, I can't teach. And that's what I always felt like in my career as an educator. Those kids need you. And there were times that they needed me. I was a social worker. I was the dentist. I was the mama. I was the teacher. I was everything to those children. Sometimes they came in and they were hungry. They couldn't think about what the morning work was. They were thinking about, I'm hungry. And I'd have to hand them a Pop-Tart or whatever they needed, or make sure they had something to eat. And that's the joy. That's the joy.
Thank you so much, Miss Sparks. It was an absolute honor speaking with you today.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And I hope anyone who hears this will know that you're making a difference in the life of someone, and you will never know the mark that you will make. Even it may happen way after the time you're gone from this earth, you've still made the mark. And hopefully it's been for the good for someone else.
For those who wish to, for social media, you can visit me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Tutor Time with Mallory. You can find her on the following social media platforms and contact her for interviews.